Hey everyone! Hello to our many, many adoring fans. We
All
are
two
the
of
Cinema
them.
Joes, as you yeah
They're coming.
exactly.
They're coming.
Are you lucky? Are you kidding? We'd be lucky to get those numbers.
Yeah.
We are the Cinema Joes, as you probably already know. I am Justin. I'm here with my two buddies, Noah and Casey. And this is now the third movie in our alternative superhero films marathon. And it's today we're going to be talking about The Crow, which is from 1994, directed by Alex Proyas, kind of a cult classic of the 90s. And this is maybe the darkest film that we've seen so far in this marathon. At least I'd say. And we certainly get a lot more. Not that we didn't get it in the past films, but this time we're really getting the vengeance angle. And it's much more overt, I'd say, than either Darkman or Swamp Thing. And I guess like the first thing we could talk about is just like in general, how did you guys react to the brutality of the vengeance here? I mean, it's pretty vicious, especially for a so-called superhero, if we're gonna call him that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, initial thoughts. Remember when we were talking last time about things that most likely inspired Chris Nolan in his Dark Knight Rise trilogy?
Yeah.
Whole bits of dialogue here kind of taken wholeheartedly
Yeah.
into those. When he walked into the room, when Crow walks into the room with all the bad guys sitting at a table and goes, "Gentlemen."
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
same inflection, I was like, okay, all right.
I didn't even
okay.
think of that.
But that's like I had to pause it because I just started to howl with laughter. I had to pause it for 5 minutes before I could keep going. But no, I do get what you're saying about this being much more explicitly brutal. It's certainly blood. I mean, that's partly the fact that the last two movies we've seen were so low budget.
Yeah.
This is also low budget, but there's more. There's kind of a grungy quality to the effects and action, which is the kind of low budget that looks realistic enough that you don't. Like, as opposed to Swamp Man, where you're like, okay, that's clearly just a guy in a rubber suit. Where it's so low budget that you can never buy that you're watching something real. This is like, you're watching a movie, but you can suspend disbelief enough to get into it. So I think that means the violent parts themselves have more of an impact.
I'll tell you, on the violence issue, I felt that's the only. It had no depth. The revenge. It was simply revenge. There was no greater story to it. I mean, the whole movie was about, you killed me, now I'm going to kill all you guys. So it felt very shallow to me. And I didn't get invested in too many of the characters at all, any of the villains. I mean, that might be... I know you don't often get invested with villains, but in today's age, you kind of do. Like, you almost root for them sometimes. I didn't in this case at all, and very little investment with the Crow. Or the character I was invested with the most was the police guy. I'm like, come on, dude, I want you to win. I don't know why. You had like 4 minutes on screen, but I want you to win. That's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I really think that's been the biggest consistent weakness with these films so far. Very, very hammy villains.
Well, I felt very opposite for Darkman. I liked Darkman because it had a little more, I guess, I don't want to say it was a deep film by any stretch of the imagination, but I really cared for the characters in that one, even the villains. Although
it did kind of throw you for a loop with the villain. And like I said in our last video, it was interesting how they found a way to allow the villain to square off against Darkman in a way that made sense, that neutralized Darkman's physical advantages, but that made sense. So I do think Darkman was probably the best in that regard, and we'll talk about this again when we talk about our next film, but there's the villains by and large have not been, they're no Smith from The Matrix, or any a villain who's maybe one note but so interesting to watch that you just their scenes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But on the other hand, there are no villains where you really can kind of get behind and get a sense of what they want. I mean, and that was something I wanted to say about the violence. This felt much more like there were graphic elements just for the sake of
graphic violence.
Graphic, all get stabbed through the chest with a broadsword. Like, okay, very productive way to run your criminal empire.
Yeah, and I wonder if that part of the movie was kind of the part that I was definitely wrestling with in terms of if this is the person we're supposed to be rooting for, He's certainly he might not be a superhero in the conventional sense, but it does seem we are supposed to be rooting for him. I mean, he's been unquestionably wronged,
Right.
but it does seem to me that the film is very much on his side when it comes to the violence, when it comes to payback. And I wonder, kind of like you were saying, Casey, I wonder if that speaks to the film's shallowness, because it almost, to me, I don't know if the film is so much condoning violence as it is condoning violence in this situation, in a situation that's very much limited to like a comic book setting. And that, which is fine, but I think you can do a comic book movie that's maybe a little more grounded in reality than I think this one wants to be. I think it just kind of wants to give you that cathartic violence, but only existing in the world of this movie, which maybe makes it shallow, because then
Well,
it's
I also want to
limited
talk
to
about
the setting.
it's more than just the characters that made me feel like the movie was very shallow. It was also more than just the characters and the plot. The world itself didn't exist outside, the crow's perspective or the cop's perspective. It was very one-dimensional, and that
I agree that you don't see much of the world.
Everything in the story for the world is very tropey, for lack of a better word.
Another thing about the Crow himself is he starts off at first you feel like, okay, this guy he's gone insane, he's an insane zombie, and he's just going to go around and kill them all. And you're like, okay. But then they throw in these moments where they're deliberately showing him to be tender and caring and loving towards the girl, towards the police officer. And I don't know how, I really wasn't sure how I felt about the dichotomy between those two.
Right. Yeah.
It felt like they were trying a little too hard to have their cake and eat it with the, okay, he's insane and he's going to kill him in a bunch of brutal ways and woohoo, bad guys getting their due. And, but he tells the police chief that he shouldn't smoke. Oh.
Or he feeds the cat, he takes time out of his day to feed the cat. No, that's a great point.
Trying a little too hard to have it both ways. Not necessarily meshing well. Not that I thought that any of those scenes were bad. I actually did like the guys. What's his name again, Justin?
Who,
the actor or the character?
The police officer who helps him?
The Crow.
Oh,
Eric Draven.
Draven, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, who was, whose son?
Bruce Lee, I think, wasn't he?
The actor is Brandon Lee. He's the son of Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Right. I did like his performance. I liked his scenes, but I felt that in terms of how they tried to portray him, the soft side and the brutal side were a little it was like watching two different characters, really. Kind of like Darkman, but with Darkman they made an emphasis of, okay, he's basically bipolar now.
And really, I think the film makes it okay for that to happen because the villains are so over-the-top cartoonish here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be fair, I'd say, I can't say they're really more, I wouldn't say they're more cartoonish than what we've seen, but it is very jarring, especially in an environment where you are trying to go for a darker feel. But I think it kind of makes it okay for him to inflict the evil upon them because they're so over the top ridiculous. I mean
Justin,
sorry, what?
Justin, the guy collects eyeballs. How can you not be totally in line with his character?
Yeah. I didn't think he was collecting them. I thought he was burning them in a ritual, which I don't know which one's better.
Yeah, we never really get a good sense of what he's doing with those eyeballs.
Yeah, it makes worlds of sense to me.
Yeah, totally.
We at one point we get his first victim, Tintin, who's the expert with the knives. And he has a line murdering is fun, it's easy, and you're just like, what? Where did that come from? Why does he need to say that? Just show us.
He only has 10 seconds.
We already know that.
Speaking though of the villains that he kills,
motivation.
One of the characters, I think T-Bird, the one that dies in the explosion.
Yeah.
He actually does have some lines that I feel were trying for some depth. Like he's reading from.
Yeah.
What was the line there? I didn't write it down. It was something like the devil turned away from goodness because. Something like that.
The devil saw how awful goodness was.
Something like that, yeah. And I feel like if they explored that aspect, I would have enjoyed the movie a lot more than I did. it would have had some significance to it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Here's the thing, guys. I don't disagree with anything that you guys have said about this movie so far. I will say, though, this might be my favorite of the ones we've seen. I don't know if I liked it overall, but relative to what we've seen, it might be my favorite because I think it does take itself a little more seriously than the other ones do, and it's more interesting to me in terms of the style of it, in terms of some of the camera work, in terms of the cinematography.
I did
the
love the
production
cinematography. It was very good.
And it doesn't have any catapult you out of the scene lines like take the fucking elephant.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, like, I don't know if I'd call this a good movie necessarily. I think it has good moments, kind of like the other ones, honestly. But I guess what I do want to defend with this movie is I do think it takes itself a little more seriously, and it's a little more. I think it's more clearly directed than maybe the past two that we've seen. There does seem to be a little more of a vision, even if, like we've been saying, it is kind of shallow in its portrayal of this character and his vengeance.
No, and that's a great point. From a directing, acting, that kind of standpoint, I think it's there. Like you said, the cinematography, probably the best we've seen so far. Better than what came 6 years later or so with Mystery Men, which I thought the cinematography was taking a couple steps back. But the writing, the script, the dialogue, the plot, the world is, in my opinion, worlds away from where it should be. It's really not anywhere close to being,
I think
good.
I think a common thread that we're going to be talking about a lot with, especially with the rest of these movies, is there are a lot of in each of these movies there's some interesting, or in some cases some really great ideas being tossed around, many of which are just not necessarily capitalized on, either from lack of funding, lack of time, or the director just, for whatever reason, the director or writer did not think through everything they were trying to get onto screen, or some combination of the three. But I agree that there's definitely much more of a unified look to the world, whereas with, Swamp Man was obviously very, very much limited by its budget. And Darkman had that weird dichotomy between the real world and the sillier moments, like the guy's finger bending right rubber or the mind trips. Not that I thought those were bad, but there was less of an immediate connection between the two. Whereas here, like, it really does, like Casey was saying, it focuses on like a handful of streets basically in the city and like two buildings. But it all looks like the same world, to its credit.
And I have to say, even though, it could have felt generic, I think it does feel specific, the setting and the way it's filmed, compared to something like, for example, Gotham City in the Dark Knight films. It feels very distinct for this world and for this character. And so I give the director credit for that. I give the cinematographer credit for that. I don't know the name of the cinematographer. But I do think there was more of an effort to create a world that was a little more kind of unified.
Yeah.
So, and I think, we've expressed some of our disappointment with some of the villains. I gotta say, I know that I'm getting the sense you guys liked Brandon Lee a lot in the lead role here. I'm a little more mixed on him, and I was really expecting to love him like in every frame, and I just wonder if maybe he has the physicality down.
Yes.
Pat. No question about that. But I wonder if,
tonally, I think, is that what you're getting at?
Vocally.
Yeah, I felt
also,
the same thing.
The way he plays those scenes where he's, he kind of knows he's in charge.
Yeah, like how he delivered.
It didn't feel quite right to me. It felt like he was almost there, but not quite. I don't know if that's, I'd have to look at his filmography. I don't know how much experience he had before this.
I don't think it was much. I don't think it was much prior to this, which is why his death during the production was considered, at least artistically, was considered such a tragedy, because there was a sense of, okay, he's developing himself, he's getting there. Like with Heath Ledger, although a lot of people would argue that Heath Ledger did, especially with the Joker and with Brokeback Mountain, that he really did reach, a level of ability and a level of acclaim that obviously Brandon Lee never did.
Yeah.
It's similar in that there was this feeling at the time of, okay, this guy's going to be one of the next big action stars.
Mm-hmm.
And, we don't know what he would have done after this, know how he would have developed. Like I said, I liked the performance. I wasn't blown away by it. I wasn't captivated by it. I was more captivated by the police officer.
Well, it's Ernie Hudson, so.
What?
It's Ernie Hudson. It's kind of hard not. He's so charismatic. It's just like Even
And
for the
Sarah,
first
the
scene.
girl, was great too.
Yeah.
He's almost like Michael Caine in a way. He is incapable of phoning it in. He can't do it. He just can't do it.
Yeah, I think, I think there's definitely some good supporting work here in terms of, like we were saying, Ernie Hudson. I actually, even though I felt like the villain wasn't quite as developed, I really do like the actor who plays Top Dollar, who's kind of like the mob boss, I guess you'd say. Like, he's in charge of every crime in this
The Kingpin.
city.
Let's call him the Kingpin.
Yeah, it's a good. Yeah. I do like him. I do like him here. Obviously, it's a very big performance, but I get the sense that's what it calls for. And gosh darn it, he's having a lot of fun.
Yes, he was.
And he is very
with his
entertaining
perfectly straightened hair.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's something really unsettling about that. I have to give credit to whoever did his hair for that. It looks really
unnatural.
strange, very unnatural. So it really does make him kind of interesting looking.
What about his girlfriend / sister's like orange hat thing towards the end? That was weird.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of that. Yeah, I really don't.
Because it's like you're saying. I feel like there is very good design to this film, but there are some things you see where you're like, that was kind of strange. That's kind of strange right there. I think the hat was definitely one of them. There's like one scene. This is less to do with the design, I think, and more to do with just the way it's directed. There's one scene where the one criminal, Skank, who's kind of the last one left alive, he's escaping in a car and he's being chased, and there's a bunch of cops sitting around waiting for something to happen, and then they see the speeding cars, and the one cop, guns it, and the other cop spills coffee on himself. Do you guys remember this scene?
Yeah, I do.
And just it adds this weird like sense of humor to the scene, which doesn't pay off. Nothing happens as a result of it. It's just kind of like a little funny thing in the middle of this really tense car chase. And I guess I wonder if that's maybe reflective of the film in general, because I do feel like tonally it's a little more consistent than the last two films, but we're still not quite there yet.
Right.
We still have those little moments where you're like, could they have done that a different way here to maybe be more in line with the world that they've created?
Freaking creepy way to go. 10 heroin needles to the chest.
Ugh, yeah, really.
That's pretty cringe. I think that's most cringe-inducing death thus far.
Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't talked about Mystery Men, but yeah, I'm gonna say thus far.
Well, there it's a very different. I think it's much lighter tone than we get here.
Well,
Mystery Men, yeah. Can we talk about? I guess I'm thinking about it now. Every one of these movies we've seen has been very. I don't want to say sexist, but it's been very male dominated. It's been, it hit me thinking of this movie when she came down as the angel. I'm like, wow, okay, first she's the victim, then the cause of revenge, now she's the angel. And then the only other woman in the movie is like a prostitute or is a witch.
And well, I guess you could say the
and the girl.
Oh yeah, and the girl, but she's like what, 10?
And honestly, she falls into the same trap where it's like she becomes a damsel in distress.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, she seems very capable of taking care of herself, and it's kind of just like at the end, Top Dollar decides, hey, I want to get to this guy, so I'm going to kidnap this little girl who he apparently cares for. And yeah, she doesn't do much for the rest of the movie. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think we're still, it's funny because I was hoping maybe with these films which were out of the mainstream that they might explore some more, they might get out of the whole patriarchal dominance thing, and we're still kind of seeing that here. I mean, we are dealing with primarily male filmmakers and screenwriters, so I guess there's that to consider. But yeah, it's still, you're right about his girlfriend too, and she really gets it worse, I think, than he does. Because not only is she killed, she's killed. I mean, she dies as a result of her injuries, so she was suffering for one thing.
Physically and mentally.
Let's throw on the gang rape too.
Yeah,
and it's like, she really does become this symbol, I think, more than a character. And you see that in the flashbacks of her and Eric. It's very, it's almost like, I almost felt like they were Hallmark card commercials, but with a red skin.
they're very, that's the red of nostalgia. tinting in at the edges.
I mean, I don't know. It's I was hoping for a little more agency from some of the characters, or maybe that the girl was going to have something to do other than become something to be rescued.
And to spoil a little bit about, I guess, Mystery Men, that was, even though there was only one female character, I feel like she had the most depth. So that'll be refreshing to see when we talk about the Mystery Men in our next. I guess
Is there
that's
anything else
it.
we wanted to say about this one? I mean, I think we.
Yeah, we beat it to death, I guess. It's not. They didn't give us much to talk about.
Yeah, no. I'm going to be more interested to see what you guys thought of Mystery Man in the next video.
Well, Justin, you said you had a couple questions?
Oh, well, I mean, if we want to, there is maybe one more thing I wanted to say about
Go
the
ahead,
Crow,
we got time.
which I thought was interesting. I don't know if what you guys think about this, but there's one thing that Top Dollar says toward the end, and I think this goes along with what you were saying, Noah, about seeing influences on Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Mm-hmm. You have Top Dollar saying to all these criminal henchmen, who I guess he is responsible for the United Nations of
criminals.
Of Detroit criminals here.
Oh, is that where they are? Detroit?
Yeah, it's supposed to be Detroit.
Oh, that explains a lot, actually.
Yeah, which explains why it's run down and everything. But yeah, you have him talking to his criminal posse, and he says, Devil's Night there's now greeting cards for Devil's Night. Like, it's become commercial.
It's become an institution.
And he says, he has a really good line. He says, "Greed is for amateurs." What I want to, and then what he wants to get back to is he wants to get back to the chaos and the anarchy. He doesn't want to, so he's trying to remove the motive part of evil and just be about causing evil, which is very much the Joker's mission in The Dark Knight. And hearing that was I was like, wow, that's really explicit, and I wonder if Nolan was influenced by that. Who knows? I don't know.
That's very true.
Even if not, I would have loved to get more of that, in any more depth.
You're right. The idea was interesting, but not really explored, which I feel like is a common theme we're seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be fair, I think these movies are not going for depth and profundity necessarily. I think they are trying to be fun with intermittent success, I think we'd say. Or at least I'd say.
Right. And my final thoughts of this movie, I guess, is that it's a movie built for a specific subculture that they'll play in the background while they're doing something else. Who knows what? But beyond that, it's not that great. That's my conclusion on it.
For The Crow?
Yeah, for The Crow.
I'm going to disagree on The Crow. I do like The Crow a lot. Very much like how I do like Darkman and I do like Swamp Thing. And they're movies that I'm glad I saw, and movies that I would not be averse to sitting down and watching again. But I can understand people not liking them. I can understand people not caring for them. So I'm kind of in the middle in regard to this one.
It's funny because I really feel like I've been in the middle on all of these movies so far. Like, I feel like there's been to me, it's been good moments, but I couldn't point to one of them and say, oh yeah, I really enjoy that one. I feel like I enjoy parts, and I feel that way with this one. But like I was saying before, this one might be my favorite so far, just because I think it sticks to its guns a little bit better than the past two movies. And and I like the look of it. I like the aesthetic of it. So I guess I'm mixed, but it's a little more. I think we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, let's take a jump 6 years forward. We'll take a little break, and anyone watching this video or podcast or whatever this is going to come out as, check back for our one on the Mystery Men, or check out our earlier ones if you haven't seen them yet. And again, we are the Cinema Joes. Take care.